Meeting at 5:30. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Kleur. Here. Councilmember Collings.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Redmond.
Here.
Mayor Stackcliffe.
Here. All right, agenda item number 3, special presentations. We have none, so we move straight to public comment. This is where people in the audience and those online can speak about items not on the regular agenda or contained within the consent agenda. So do we have anyone in the audience that would like to speak now? Come on up, speak, state your name and what city you live in.
Laurel Harkness. I live in Mount Shasta. Great to see everybody. Couple of just, I think, announcements. I work a lot with the Forest Service, and I've been appointed to the Federal Advisory Committee of the Northwest Forest Plan that's being amended right now. It's 17 national forests. It's 24.5 million acres, and all the forest that surrounds Mount Shasta is part of that, that forest plan area. They're having their quarterly meeting next week. It's the first time it's been in California. It's in Weaverville. It lasts for 3 days, so it's the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's a huge time commitment, but I encourage you to just look at the agenda anyway and certainly reach out to me if you have any questions. Second is a little bit more fun. I've worked with this classical pianist for several years, and he travels around the West with a Steinway piano on a trailer, visiting parks and open spaces, and having concerts open to the public. He'll be in Mount Shasta as part of the tour for the first time this year, May 25th, up at Shasta's Park. There'll be a Steinway on a trailer up at the upper field. It's kind of a really cool experience. It's headphones, so it's kind of this, you can ride your skateboard in the skate park or ride the trails or tour around the park. The idea is to interact with the landscape as well as have some interaction with classical music. So anyway, March 25th, shameless promo, 4 p.m. Yeah, that's it. So thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Laurel? Hi. I heard that Grinduro is not coming back for the 3rd year. Do you know any information on that?
On which?
The Grinduro bike race.
Oh, Grinduro, yeah. So I don't represent SORA any longer, but yeah, no, it is not coming back. Yeah, the finances of putting on an event like that are sort of challenging. Okay. So yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak now? Okay, name and city of residence.
Good evening. My name is Scott Dolph. I live in Mount Shasta. I'm a local builder here. I've been building in the area for 20 years now, except everywhere in the city limits of Mount Shasta, which has been somewhat problematic over the years. But I decided to buy a piece of property and build 2 triplexes that I'm going to be doing here hopefully soon. And I understand there's going to be a change with the building inspector. And I was just wondering, I had heard, and I don't know if it's true, but I'd like to confirm that they're going to be dropping the inspections down to 2 days a week, 2 consecutive days a week.
All right, hold on a second. So should we have this gentleman come back later?
Probably best to have comments during the agenda item.
We're actually going to deal with this later on, if you can stay around.
Yeah, okay.
Your input would be helpful. So,
okay,
yeah,
appreciate it. Thank you
very much. Anyone else in the audience like to speak about non-agenda items? Consent agenda? No. All right. Anyone hands raised? All right. So we'll close public comment at this time and move on to staff and council comments. When you always start with the city manager. So Todd, you have the floor.
Okay. First thing up is the landing. I mentioned that we're working on a resolution of intention with Pinsino Holdings. We've got the bones of a contract that they sent over. I provided comments. It's back with them, and I'm waiting to see if we can, see how they respond, and then it needs to go to John Kenny. I'm hoping if everything lines up, I have that LOI in front of council at the next meeting. And they're talking about phasing. They want to start with a phase where they've contacted Hyatt and Marriott to look at a feasibility study as a phase one, again, to figure out how they should size this. And, they're willing to work with the city, and they understand they're going to have to go through a rigorous public outreach process to formulate plans for the site so we get people out in the community supporting this. We know we'll have our detractors, but we want to make sure we've got the rest of the community in support of this. The well issue has been ongoing. It seems that with Somek, Simmons, and Dunn, the water law experts, we've gotten to a point where we figure out there is a way to share the well with One Shasta to provide city water to balance out the system, but also to provide for One Shasta's needs, but it's unclear what they plan to do. And when we got this proposed language over to John Kenny, he said they're missing the point that what we really need here is, no matter what One Shasta does, since it can only be used for agricultural uses and non-manufacturing, that, really what it comes down to is we're looking for One Shasta to agree to cede the tank site and the easement for this. And really what it comes down to is anybody that applies for connections to the city, we have to show that we've got the ability to provide for them, and so that's what we'll do. And I think we've got enough water to serve the city as well as One Shasta, but we do have another tank that the city has tied up at the Baptist Church that if we ran into an issue with the amount of water that we can pull, that there is that opportunity to pull up to the right height that we need to serve the city, which is the point of the tank. So I know a lot of people are concerned about the old hospital that is still under arson investigation. That site, as many of you know, when it had asbestos in it and other potentially black mold, and when the fire started, that all of that with millions of gallons of water that were sprayed on that site, now it's all soaked into the ground, so it's something that we need to clean up. It's been tarped. Someone reached out to me to let me know that that tarp is ripping in certain areas. Contacted the tarping company to have them come back, and there were some 2x4s that were sticking straight up that they didn't bother to cut down. So what I've asked them to do this time is to make sure they remove any obstructions or intrusions, and then to retarp the areas that are ripping. And if that hasn't been done today, it will be done this week. That's the main stuff I've got.
Thank you, Todd. Chief, do you have some comments? Go ahead.
So first of all, the Public Works Director, as of April 1st, ended the snow season officially. So all vehicles that, if you've got them parked up at the Sisson Ball Field or any of the parking lots in town, those are no longer designated snow areas, so please get them out of there. We are going to be enforcing heavily this week, getting all the vehicles out of there. We got opening day, I believe the 15th, coming up here soon for baseball at the Little League parks. We're getting out of there. The second thing is road construction is up and running now. They got the detours working on several spots. So a little extra patience for people in town driving around. I foresee an impact on heavier traffic, especially during the summertime on city streets, specifically Mount Shasta Boulevard. When they start backing up at that south end down by the 89, they can still get off there. So we're going to have an extra radar trailer put down at the south end. I'm going to have some extra officers down there just to slow people down when they're coming in through there. But just be heads up, there's probably going to be a lot of truck traffic like last year.
All right, thank you, Chief. City planner is joining us. Would you like to comment on something?
Just quickly, wanted to update you on the general plan, or excuse me, the housing element comments that came back from HCD. We do have a few that are rising to a level of non-substance, so that means they're clerical in nature. We would have hoped to get the green light and what we call the happy letter from HCD, but we weren't so lucky. So we're in what's called third review, which is unfortunately typical in this cycle of housing element reviews by HCD. When we get into the meat, if there's anything that does rise to a level of substance, we'll be coming back to Planning Commission for advisory role to you all, but I don't think that'll be the case right now. But you'll hear an update from me later.
All right, thank you, Jeff. And Muriel, would you like to comment at this time?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just to report that union negotiations have started, and in the next council meeting, we'll be doing a closed session to discuss their requests. I'm continuing with the 24-25 budget related to some of those issues, as well as some of the changes that have happened since it was presented to you, and I'm starting the 25-26 budget as well.
All right, thank you, Muriel. And now council comments. I'll start on my right. Madam Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. I am part of the hospital advisory board here locally, and most of the time there's not much to report, but this last one, Dignity Health in the northern region, so it's the 3 hospitals, ours, Reading, and Red Bluff, could not reach an agreement with Medi-Cal, and as of April 1st, they will not be accepting any Medi-Cal patients for non-emergency care, and that includes our Dignity Clinic. So I remember several years ago where there was a Blue Cross negotiation that lapsed several months, and then it eventually worked out. So I'm hopeful that that will be the case here, but as of now, it could have an impact to our hospital.
Okay, well, thanks for that informative update. Mayor Pro Tem, nothing today? Councilmember Stearns? You're good? Councilmember Collins? All right, and I have nothing to comment on at this point, so we'll move right ahead with committee updates, if any. And we are going to have a lengthy discussion about the Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee, so
I've got nothing new.
Nothing new, okay. Very good. Consent agenda, let's move right on. And I think everyone was at the March 25th meeting, what I recall. All right, so consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, March 25th, 2024 regular meeting. B, police department report for March 2024. And C, determination of the disability of Richard G. Joyce, resolution CCR-24-08. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will move to approve consent agenda items A through C by title only.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And aye. Any opposed? Unanimous approval of the consent agenda. We'll move on. Give me a second. I believe this is it is number 8, and it's going to be about DIAC. So, yeah. Discussion and possible action regarding the Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee fiscal review and project approval. I'll let City Manager introduce this item, and then Ashley Hagee will join the discussion and as the committee chair of DIAC. So we'll start with Todd.
Yeah, so so I have been working with DIAC for quite some time. We started with a different configuration of members, and there was a bit of dysfunction on that group, and it has been reconstituted. It's been probably a year and a half, coming on 2 years, and what I would say is this group is incredibly motivated. They work together well, and they're getting projects done. So I'm really happy to be part of that group when I can, and just want to introduce Ashley to kind of walk through, plans for the future.
Well, hi, everybody. How's it going? Like Todd said, I started about 2 years ago. Before that, DEAC didn't have a lot of steam behind it. So between me and my fellow chairs, partners, whatever you want to say, we've gotten a couple different projects that have been on the docket for years now. We finally got the power box art up and going. We've done some bike racks, and then we have some art installation that we're looking to put in as well. One of the comments that we have seen for council is just getting a budget and then having an idea of how we're going to spend our money. We have not been able to do that just because getting the budget has been a little bit difficult for us. Planning everything has been another challenge as well, just in terms of what we can do, what we can't do. So we've all just kind of been getting into it and going together with this as a process. I think one of the biggest things that we're struggling with right now, though, is due to the parking area. Our budget was that was going to be taken out of our budget. Nobody knew about it, which was really unfortunate. We did come to an agreement thanks to Todd and John. We have somebody in there, so it's not, going to affect our budget as much. But that just being said, there is some discontent between me and my other members just because we don't know when something is going to be taken out of. We don't know what our budget's going to be. We don't know if it needs to be used for something different, and that makes it really difficult to plan for anything. So for something that we were trying to do for this August was we were trying to do a Biketober event, which we were hoping to make as actually one of the qualifiers for the Enduro races, and it's a huge draw for a lot of people. Ashland does it. Obviously, there's only 4 of us right now, so this kind of event takes a lot out of us. We are all local business owners. We all have a lot going on anyways, but we all really love Mount Shasta, so we want that to go forward. Finding out about that, our budget was going to be affected without actually knowing. My partner actually informed me, nobody else from council, from anything else. So to have that put upon us, it's a little bit disheartening to go through all of this work and not be able to perform or not be able to do the things that we want to do. So we have all gotten together. Basically, I'm sorry to say that we can't all be here just because of other circumstances, but we have talked about how we can fix this, basically, because we are all very motivated. We all want to see Mount Shasta do better, and just as business owners, it's something that we want to do. And we don't know if it's something that needs to happen where we dissolve DEAC and we start our own committee where we have all of our business owners. I don't know how familiar everybody is with it, but our downtown is limited to about a couple blocks. So that really restricts the amount of people and that we can have actually help us and be a part of everything. It limits us to what we can go and do for the community. So we've really thought about this, and at this point, the event planning for us has come to a standstill, which is kind of a shame for the town, I mean, in all honesty, but that's kind of where we're all at right now. Like Todd said, he's been at, I think he's been to every single meeting. He's very in touch with what we're trying to do, very helpful. We just want to keep forward progression, and we don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to do things just to be stopped because we don't have what our budget is going to be, and we don't know when, some of that is going to be taken out, especially if we're trying to do larger projects. So I don't know if you guys have any questions, but that's kind of like where we're all at this point.
Questions?
I do, but I can.
You wait. Go ahead, yes.
I have a lot of comments, but I'll start with questions. Is there a way that we can, within council, give you a set budget and see kind of the profit and loss that you had anticipated for the event and get something in place sooner rather than later so that that event can take place?
So at this point in time, I think it's something that if this event were to take place, it takes about a year in the making to do all of this. So at this point, we're in April. We were trying to do it for October. I don't think it will get done this year, in all honesty. In terms of the money that it would make, we were in the process of doing that, but it's also, where is our budget gonna be? Because again, this parking lot was going to take a huge hit out of it. We ended up I helped to find a tenant for it so that we could, not have such a substantial loss to our budget. But it's one of those things that, how are you supposed to budget for something or know what you're going to do if you just kind of get side-swiped with different things? So
Yeah, and I think this is, at least for me, the first time hearing about that project.
Yes.
So we can talk about this during discussion, but I think more of a communication between the two would be very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we encourage everybody, like our meetings, everything. If you guys want something a little bit more intact of like what we're talking about, we're more than happy to like discuss things. It's just, where are we going with it? The lack of communication,
Go ahead. I apologize.
It's nobody's fault. It's just, I'm not sure. I guess Tessa said it's right. I think this is a big lack of communication of, I think we're the first group that's actually gone a little bit above and tried to see what we can do in terms of, DEAC, what are the responsibilities, what can you do? Because there hasn't been a lot of precedence beforehand. So we're kind of all just discovering this, but it's really nice to know, like, for the Chamber of Commerce, most other, groups has a budget that you talk about every single meeting, and you go over your expenses and you go over what is expected. We've got a rough outline, but for the most part, that money hasn't been touched.
The rest of my apology is about what I don't know. This is my 12th year, so I'm pretty aware of DEAC. I used to be on the committee. I know what they've been doing over time. I've heard nothing but good things for the past 2 years, and speaking for myself, I just didn't know. Obviously, having a stable set of revenues such that you can forecast and plan expenses to be within the revenue guidelines that you were told were going to be there. That's obviously a standard way of doing things, and when that doesn't happen, I just will stop here and go, I don't know why it didn't happen. I don't know why there weren't replacements out of the general fund relative to things that moved out of your budget into other places. I'm just gonna listen some more, but I'll finish with, I'm sorry, and I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I'm pretty sure we can fix this.
And that's our hope for it. And we've had between the group of us of what needs to be done, what would be the best solution to make it work. And that's kind of where we got into the discussion of dissolving DEAC and maybe doing an organization where it's maybe a nonprofit or something where all the businesses can get together, just because right now to expand the downtown district sounds like it's going to be actually a really big challenge. That's actually one of the reasons that I joined DEAC, is because I think that we need to include a lot more businesses. I think if we all have the plan of growing Mount Shasta like we're trying to do, it needs to be set right now so that we don't have something in terms of like Bend where everything is spread apart, where we do have a harmonious town, so it makes the whole entire of Mount Shasta better. And I don't want business owners to feel like they can't help or that they're not a part of anything. And that is another complaint that I've heard just from business owners in general since I've taken on, my role. Again, a lot of people don't know about DEAC just because we haven't seen a lot for it. That's something that, again, we're trying to do a little bit more of a forward push with it, working with the Chamber, working with Boys and Girls Club, all of these different organizations. So that's kind of where we are, and we want to just keep that momentum. But if it's something that would be easier done, as a separate entity, or I don't know what we need to do, but something needs to be done, because at this moment, I don't think that we have 4 members right now. We're supposed to have 5. We can't find another person to fit it because they don't have the roles to do it. They're not in the right, basically, square footage, which is really sad. And if that business owner who even wanted to volunteer, do a volunteer base, how is it going to, benefit their business is going to be the next thing. So.
To the chair, do you mind if I hit on that topic, or do you want me to wait until after?
It's a clarifying question.
No.
Hold off. Any clarifying questions?
There's more coming, so hold that
No,
thought.
you
Clarifying questions?
Why don't you go ahead and then I'll...
No,
I don't have a
she has
question.
discussion.
yeah, comment.
Clarifying statement.
Actually, I applaud you for your efforts. I've also heard good things of what DEAC's been doing. I also served as chair of DEAC for a period of time, pre-COVID and COVID. So I know how difficult it can be and how difficult it can be to find members. The boundaries were set by ordinance back in, I think, 1957.
It's pretty old, yeah.
There are, I think, 7 broadly stated categories of purposes, and I'm sure that you've seen those. We have talked for some time, some years, about the possibility of expanding the downtown district, and how one would go about doing that. I think more recently, I think maybe the city manager has been talking with the city attorney about how that might be done. So I want to thank you for all that you're doing. I think you have inspired our city manager.
Okay.
I recognize the importance of knowing how much money DEAC has in its coffers, so that you can plan accordingly. Frankly, that was a difficult thing for us to find out in the first place when I was on DEAC. But being able to put together a budget is extremely important. So I appreciate your efforts to do that, and I do apologize, as well as the other council members, for the lack of communication. I, too, was not aware of some of the things you've just told us about.
And that's the hard part, too, about it all is, it's not that we're saying that we're disagreeing with any of this. I mean, we all want to see, the daylighting of Castle Street, I think, is all number one on, everybody's agenda. It's just the clarity and the transparency behind where it's going to come from and how it's going to affect, especially a certain organization. It should have been discussed before, being brought to council, in my opinion, or we should have, had a part with it or something. I know that in the past that they've taken out loans from the DEAC fund because it is one of the larger ones, because not a whole lot has been done with it, and it's nice because we have a steady revenue besides it, and it's something that me and Muriel have talked about too, in terms of expanding the budget, what we can do. We've talked about parklets and such, so definitely trying to get on board with it. It's just well, you all know you're all doing this, you know what I mean, basically as a volunteer, you know, action. It makes it a little bit frustrating when your free time, it just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, or you're working backwards.
Well, one of the things that the council took action on recently, I think we've completed that, or maybe we're still in the process, is increasing the fees for the businesses to bring that up to date from the 1950s. So that will help DEAC, hopefully.
And in terms of, again, the downtown expansion, that's something else, you know, more businesses. It's, you know, every time that you have to ask somebody for a little bit more money, it's always going to be met with, you know, but if you can, and that's part of the process that we're trying to do right now, just in terms of what we can do for the business, what is that money going towards? You know, it's like, okay, if you can have a trash can, if you can have, you know what I mean, like a bike rack, just pretty simple things. I mean, these business owners would be more than happy to, you know, help out and get a little bit more.
I don't know if you've seen materials from past regarding the bike racks, but we presented various models of bike racks and ideas for bike racks for the city in the past. Also, another thing that I found was that we had very active community members who weren't official voting members. And I don't know if that's your situation or not, but for example, Jamie from Petals was very active and had wonderful ideas. Couldn't vote, but she was a sort of an unofficial community member.
And she has helped us in the past as well, especially with Winter Magic was kind of her baby with that as well. But you know how it is, everybody, you know, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, one of those kind of things. But we definitely have a lot of great community members. It's just where they can help and, you know, having the voice to say. I know that in the terms of just talking about Jamie's from Petals, that's something that really did disappoint her, is that she couldn't serve, you know, on, you know, which that's terrible to hear.
That would be a different story.
So, I mean, to add her on would just be, you know, like we have a lot of great business owners here. Just what can they do? Is it going to help their business? Because that's the big thing.
Now, one more thing that you mentioned was we're always invited to DEAC meetings. I want to invite you to come to City Council as often or whenever you want.
We, well, I shouldn't say me, I should say my partner back there, always tries to keep me up to date, you know, the hours in the day, you know, Monday's one of my only days off, so, but definitely in terms of if we have projects or something like that, we're more than, you know, willing to come around. It's just, you know, finding the time in the day.
One of the things that we were trying to get started back in ancient history when I was on DEAC was the downtown facade improvements. And I think that from what I understand, you all are working on that.
We are. So we actually just got together a contract for it, kind of just some basic rules and such. That was actually going to be a spring project for us. So we're looking at sending that out to business owners. We're looking in particular for some that need a little bit more love. We're going to take kind of precedent over. But that's definitely something that we're looking into. And that was a project where, I mean, even if we had to do, you know, a weekend where just painting or something like that, I know a lot of my members are very forward with it. It's just this last bit with the budget and everything has gotten us all kind of a little bit down. So we're kind of just like, okay, let's take, we need to take a step back and just figure out how we're all going to proceed. Because regardless of if this DEAC continues or it's something new, it's definitely something that we want to continue as well. With the business owners, we've definitely been trying to talk to them and such, so. it's something in the works, but again, that's been on the docket for you. Yeah, so it's been on there for a minute. Yes, and then just seeing, okay, do we have that as a separate fund? Do we do, what we do? And in terms of that, asking for, that was donated by the Association of Realtors here, and I think I speak for all of us, we don't really feel comfortable in asking for any other groups for money or anything until one of these projects gets at least, done for a couple businesses so people can see it, and then feel good about, what their money is going towards is a big one for us.
Okay, so I've got some clarifying questions, but I'm going to need staff help here. So, Muriel, the Business Improvement Fund is one of several and the non-major governmental funds. Is that DEAC? The revenue there is about $9,800?
That's correct.
Okay, and the $9,800 each year, I've seen this before, so it's about $9,800. Is that related at all to the $12 per business for the snow plowing?
No, it's a parking fee.
It's a parking fee for a set number of businesses?
That particular fund, the Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee Fund used to be called the Parking Fund because that's where the money comes from, is parking fees, and one of its main duties was to maintain the parking lots in the downtown district. And the general fund actually loaned DEAC the funding for the parking lot that is behind Parker Plaza. And over the years, and I think I reported this at the last council meeting too, that over the years,
That got paid off.
that got paid off,
Right.
at the between $9,500 and $9,800 in parking fees that came in, that paid the principal and interest on that loan over time.
Before I get to what your balance is,
Could I actually ask a little clarifying question myself in terms of that? John Kennedy is one of the people that told us that the city took out a loan from DEAC.
It's the other way around.
Okay.
So, Muriel, one more question. So this fund is separate, entirely separate from the general fund. You don't lump these?
No, this is a special revenue fund.
Okay.
Funded by the downtown district.
Okay.
The money comes from the parking fees that each business in that district pays.
And it's not
on their business license.
It's not commingled with the general fund, so that's
Not
clear.
at all.
That's what I thought. Okay. So, Ashley et al., this is the final number for June 30th, 2023. Started at about, well, it's not clear where you started. Oh, you started at $64,000 and you ended the year at $70,000. So you had $70,000 to spend from July 1st till now. I don't know what you've spent.
So like I said, currently what we have done while I have been chair was it went to the installation and purchase of a couple bike racks. We have gotten the power box art done. And then there has been actually, if you've seen, the Flower of Life has been on our agenda actually from day one.
Ballpark, what do you think this was costing?
Oh, I don't think that we're over 10.
$10,000.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think that's, this is,
So the next
nothing.
clarifying thing is the cost of the parking lot. So Todd, the Beers building or the Brownell building is, the rent on that's $2,250?
On the building.
The whole rent that we decided to cover for 6 months?
It's $2,350.
$2,350?
Totally for both, for the unpaid parcels and the paid parcel.
I thought it was $2,250. We just picked up yours thing, so he's $2,250.
Yeah, and it's divided between the paved lots and the
Right, and
the
now we have
structure.
a sublease.
We just got in.
It was going to offset it by how much?
$1,350.
So we're down around $900.
Yeah.
Okay, so the assessments and other possible revenue for this particular fund comes in around $12,000, or it did the prior fiscal year. I don't know if it's like that every year, but worst case scenario, the rent on that parking lot after the offset is going to negate a large portion of that, but you still have a large fund balance with which to work, whether it's for Biketober or any other project.
So part of the reason for what we're trying to do, we're actually trying to do a larger project at this time, and it's actually that parking lot behind Parker Plaza
Right.
is a huge thing that we're all trying to do. Between that and the expansion of the downtown area, those are kind of our main two things. Everything else has just been kind of a project that has been on the docket that we just feel like we need to complete, just so that we can feel like we've done something, or a little bit, like a little win. So in terms of having that, that's basically what we were saving the money for, and looking at our large budget, because it's going to cost a lot. Basically, it's going to have to be done in phases, from, just having it repaved, putting in the electrical, you guys know how it
the parking
goes.
lot
Yeah.
improvement, that actually will be,
Yeah.
what you're thinking about there probably will be very expensive.
Yes, so that's something that was our goal towards doing these events, has all been in mind to eventually do that. Or, if the city, eventually does the daylighting, to have that money so it can go down to the improvements of the downtown, and that we have a large enough budget that we can put that and actually make a dent, versus, okay, we're gonna make, a little bit of money here, a little bit of money here, for these random little things. We have a bigger picture in mind. So that's the hard part about with the budgeting for it, and something that we were doing this year prior to us figuring out that we were gonna get a little hit in that, so.
Okay, so there could be the desire for funds for a very large project, meaning the parking lot improvement, which I already knew about,
Yep.
but okay. So thanks for clarifying that. We're going to move on to public comment with those folks behind you, and so if you want to take a break and
Yes.
sit down, and anyone that has their hands up online. So folks in the audience, if you'd like to comment on this subject, feel free to come up. Name and city of residence. All right, no volunteers there. No hands raised. All right, so Ashley, in case we need you, we might call you up. So yeah, be ready. All right, so council, let's discuss this and see if we can help give direction to Ashley and/or city manager. So go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm still confused. There's a how many $1,000?
Well, did we start paying the lease yet? Like one payment, right?
Yes.
Okay, so assuming that we received $10,000 to $12,000 for this fund, they're at $80,000.
And
Minus project costs.
right, and minus for this parking lot lease, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, depending.
We haven't spent it yet, but the actual cash.
Right, but they will, that fund will get dinged that amount of money.
Yeah, so the unpaved lots, since, we don't have a sublease on that, so at the end of the 6 months, we'll be short 5,400. That would, was taken out of the downtown parking district.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
That with the income that will come on from the sublease or
Yeah.
sublease, and versus the checks we have to write, $2,250 or so, we'll net out losing about $6,000-ish.
Yeah.
So you're 80 down to,
My math didn't look like that. I ran some numbers, and I don't know, but this is, I was quickly scribbling.
Please help me understand.
So $2,350 a month is what we are paying out.
$2,250.
Well, he said $2,350.
$23.50.
$2,350. We have a
More than beers?
Well, he told me it was $23.50.
Anywho.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Then we subleased out $1,350 of that. So the net of that times 12 is $10,800.
It's not times 12.
Times
We're
6.
only leasing it for 6 months.
Oh,
It's a 6-month lease.
But hypothetically, if we do lease it on a yearly basis to do the project and turn it into a parking lot, it's going to negate the cash flow coming in for this
so how
fund.
much do we receive, well, how much does DEAC receive per month? Or per year?
Per year, it looks like about $10,000 to $12,000.
Okay, so if it's $12,000, then the net of that is $1,200 to the good.
Yeah, there's a little
Yeah.
positive cash.
So I'm not
in
seeing
other
where the
words,
6,000 deficit is.
it's not apocalyptic for the DEAC fund.
Right, but we're not,
They're not
Going backwards.
They're not building to do bigger
right,
projects.
okay. Sorry, go ahead.
And I've got something to add that may be timely, and I don't want to get too off track. The environmental report came back on both properties. The structure itself, I would highly suggest running. There are buried hydraulic lifts. There's a 55-gallon waste oil tank, clogged drains, you name it. It's a, if we went into a phase 2 and the costs associated with that, it may, yeah, I don't know what the commercial appraisal is going to come back at, but it's going to be a big hit to the owner. I don't think the owner's going to swallow it. And if we go down this rabbit hole, we'll be spending money, and we don't know how much that cleanup is going to cost. So my recommendation is that after the 6 months, we let the structure and paved parcel go.
Right, thanks for that clarification. Does everybody get that? We just are then looking at the dirt parking lot, there were parking lots before. How's the environmental report on those? Tell us the truth.
So if we're using it for parking, we could do a phase 2 just to
Now,
find
just tell us how bad it is.
If we're using it for parking, it's going to be okay. The issue is that what we need to do is, instead of going a full ESA, go down, do 3 or 4 borings, do 2 water samples, so we get an idea of what the levels of contaminants are there at the time that we purchase the property, so somebody can't come back to us and say, hey, you guys bought this from the city and it's now X. There's this kind of contamination and you're on the hook for it. Well, no, we're not, because we did samples. So there's still a strong possibility about the two APNs that are unpaved and the use for parking.
So in other words, despite contaminants, if we take precautionary samples to protect ourselves against future
Yep.
lawsuits or whatever, we can then turn those into paved parking lots.
Yes.
Without a major cleanup at all. Is that what you're saying?
That's true. The hitch is the commercially assessed value on the 2 unpaved parcels is $100,000. So whatever.
That's total or per? Total.
Just for the 2 unpaved APNs. Total 100,000. And, no matter what, if we do water samples or not, and it can be used for parking, it's limited in its use. So there should be some write down on that value, and it doesn't mean, yet that we've got a willing seller and they're willing to take what the suggested write down should be on that property. So, that'll be a negotiation, but that's not dead. I think it's a good idea to pursue that.
So you're still at this point in favor of reaching a negotiated settlement with respect to price on those 2 parcels versus renting it indefinitely?
After we do water sampling and we do a couple test borings, so we know what we're looking at.
Okay, so at this point, it's a 6-month lease, and Todd is trying to figure out what to do next. Does everybody get the picture? So as far as DEAC goes, this may not last beyond 6 months. But go ahead.
I mean, to be completely frank right now, we don't even know how much this is going to cost at this point. So in terms of, can everybody hear me okay?
I'm sorry, you don't know what?
What this project is going to cost. If you guys are going to do a parking lot, what you're going to have to do in terms of environmental studies. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm in real estate. This could be like a bigger can of worms than, we anticipate or what you go down to. So in terms of, yes, we have a good chunk of money in our budget right now, but what is that going to be? We don't even have, you guys can't even figure out a dollar amount for what it's going to be. So in terms of us doing events, planning things, what we're trying to budget, that's where the discontent is, because we don't know.
Yeah, and that's very understandable. And we do need to discuss whether long-term, if we were to rent that or buy it, whether the funds to cover the payments, whether they're rental payments or loan payments on a purchase, would come from DEAC or something else.
Right.
I think, short of raising the fees on the members of this parking district, short of doing that, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that all the funds yearly would be used. So yes, you would have no net positive cash flow, and that they would be running down the balance I talked about at the beginning of about $70,000 for projects. And DEAC would essentially be just a parking district that pays for the cost of one district, of one parking lot.
Yeah.
So we do have to come up with something much more thoroughgoing to either rent or purchase what we're thinking of doing, because I don't think it's a good choice to basically not phase out DEAC. It just becomes very singular. The money from the district members goes to that one parking lot, and it's supposed to be more of a general parking district.
So
Yeah, so
again,
we
that's
hear your fears and pains, yes.
Because if that's how it's going to be, I mean,
No, we have to come up with something.
it's fine. We need to figure out a different way. I mean, as business members, I think we need to figure out a different, approach to what we would like to do, because we still want these events to happen. We still all own businesses here, so we will still do it. It's just, do we take this path or do we take this path is basically what we're looking at.
To the chair.
Through the chair.
Tim,
We got lots to the chairs.
Yeah.
Mr. Stearns first.
All right.
He beat you.
Ashley, Todd, Mayor, I think council has been advised of what the issues are, enlightened. We're not going to resolve those issues tonight. But I think we have a base now for having discussion and coming up with future viable plans. I think that's where we are at this point.
I would agree, but Councilmember Clore? Final comment?
I think that there are two separate issues. One is we need to get our act together in figuring out what we're doing with the parking lot. I do think, and this is not my forte, but I do think that finding grant funding for the environmental study and that kind of thing is a viable option. I don't want to speak too soon on that, but I also don't want this fund to be used solely for that, because that was not the intent of how it's formed today. So that's step one. Step two is, speaking for myself, I would hate for you guys to disassemble. I think that working with the city is really instrumental so that we have the boots on the ground of what the downtown wants and needs and can bring it to us and we can help. And I don't think that there has been a back and forth, not blaming anyone. I just think that we have been in the dark of, especially of your big event that was going on. That would have been amazing. So what Councilmember Stearns was saying, we have an item on the agenda every single week or every single time that we meet that's an update for DEAC. And the chair doesn't have to come every time, but if you can designate one person to come and just give a brief update of, this is what we want, this is what we're asking for, so that we are very clear.
I think that's definitely a great idea, especially if we have like a larger project.
Yeah.
I think the hesitation that we've had to come before council before, we have tried to get on the agenda, especially for the Flower of Life, in terms of where we were going to locate it when we had that. It's just between idea and boots on the ground stages is completely different, because, okay, you have a great idea one time, you need to go through the permit. Like I said, these things take time. So it's like, okay, where is it going to go? And then when we actually have something viable, that's when we would like to come to you, because we don't want to waste any of your time if we're not, there. We're ready to go, boots on the ground, everything, versus I have a great idea for next Saturday,
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear that, but also I think it's important for us to know what those bigger things might be, so that when we do make budget decisions, that we have that in mind too.
No.
So I think it's very important that
we can definitely do that. And I mean, whether, it might be helpful for us to just either email, council. I do, for just my personal, I do notes of the highlights of what we talked about. We can definitely, send an email when we send everything to Kathy,
great.
for minutes or something, so that we all stay in the loop.
Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to say is at our last meeting, it came to our attention that we have an archaic downtown limit. Well, we've known this, but it's now coming up as a potential issue in regards to snowplow. So we have formed a subcommittee to look at that in respect to snow removal, but part of that subcommittee is going to be looking at the potential of expanding that downtown area so that
Just as a side note, I would love to get on that. We do have a map of what we were looking at. I believe something was done in, maybe Tim can help me, in 2017. I believe there was looking at restructuring the downtown, because that's where I based my map off of originally, and then just kind of expanded it based off of, new businesses and such. So, but keep me in the loop on that one.
Okay. Todd, or who's on that subcommittee? Is it
John and Jeffrey.
Okay, so maybe between the three of you, they can loop you in.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to wrap this item up.
Okay.
I'll just
Perfect.
summarize that I think we all agree that a funding mechanism for the potential new parking lot after this 6-month period is necessary. DEAC is not totally crippled, but annoyed, the members are, by the loss of net revenue due to this parking lot project. So I think you have funds to finish the things that you mentioned that you're currently working on.
We have the funds for that. We have it for that.
The facades, you take a look at that and be in discussion with us as to whether you want to proceed with any of that.
And Muriel, I believe that one's a separate one, correct? For the facade improvement, that one's actually, you have it in a separate category, because that was specific money for the facade improvement. So that's something that can't actually be touched.
Well, any of the budget items go before council for approval. It's not, and all of the funds are restricted anyway, but I believe what I have in the budget for DEAC right now for 24-25, which is certainly up for discussion, I believe I set aside $10,000.
Yeah, that just, as I understand it, if a group gives you money, it has to be used for,
if we
what they
received a
said for-
donation from somebody for a particular thing, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so that that might come under other revenue in the list I see here. So there's funds to do things, so continue. But yes, the big parking lot project, maybe do some inexpensive planning, but yes.
We all planned
not be
on
there.
staying on the committee until we saw at least that done, was something that we were hoping, and especially the power box artwork as well, since we just did a contest and such for it. So there were certain little things that we would not leave unfinished, but definitely it's just, where do you go after this? Do we even want to stay on this? Is it worth your time? Kind of one of those things.
I'm very bullish on DIAC. I
Yeah.
think you should stay on it.
Yes.
I think you should look at expanding the downtown, like you said. We will resolve this parking lot issue. Actually, we're going to finish with comments from Mr. Collins.
Just a few quick things. If you have big ideas, which are great, it's wonderful, make a budget. Let us know. Sooner versus later.
I'm seeing that.
Because then all of a sudden when we look at a $70,000 or $80,000 budget, we go, well,
Yeah.
wait a minute, 35 of that's already spent. Whatever the number is that you've brought to us, and we went, yeah, great. So that's step one. Step two, we haven't finished discussing how if we find that these two parcels of land that we want to turn into a parking lot are going to work out. We, don't know how much it is, but I'm thinking 6 figures easily and significant. So I don't think money's going to come from other than the DIAC funds for sure. And we haven't begun to discuss about potential revenues from those parking lots. Do we charge for parking in those lots alone? We've never discussed that. We don't know if there's any appetite for that or how much revenue that might be. We're not there yet. But relative to protecting hey, this is our budget, we've let it build up, we've got some small things, but we'd like to do some bigger things, that's great. We want you to just let us know and give us a placeholder number.
No, I think the key has been communication
Yeah.
for this whole entire meeting, for sure.
Well, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on. Thank you,
Thank you
Ashley.
all.
I'll talk to you later. So we're going to move on to number 9 on the list of things to do here. And this is a first reading for an amendment of the City Municipal Ordinance Section 10.44.080, parking restricted. And Chief of Police, Mr. Gibson, will speak.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The city has been looking for ways to improve the availability in the parking in the downtown and business districts. Currently, there are 4 city public parking lots located in the area that have seen an increase in abandoned or long-term parking lots taking up parking for visitors on a daily basis in the downtown areas. Some of these abandoned vehicles, we've had raw sewage flowing out of them. Their sides have been falling off of them, forcing us to shut down the parking lots, bring in public works, clean up hazmat, and towing off abandoned vehicles at a cost to the city. The changes that are being asked for essentially would allow for law enforcement to make sure that there's no vehicles left overnight. Thus, we're getting a quicker response to see if maybe somebody's still with a vehicle and maybe prevent it from being abandoned in that area. It's not always going to happen, but it's going to give us a chance to get on these quicker before we have sewer running down the parking lots and preventing parking. The time restrictions also will allow for Public Works to be able to get in there and sweep them and clean them. As you can see, they get a lot of garbage, a lot of dirt and stuff in there. Keep them clean so people will want to park there and be able to park, for example, behind Parker Plaza and come up. So I'm proposing that the 4 parking areas be changed. They're currently at a 72-hour parking, which gives, this takes away parking. People park in there for 72 hours, then they move at one spot, and they park for 72 hours, and they move for one spot. And it takes away from people wanting or the availability of citizens visiting to park in our downtown areas. Proposing that the time change be the same as the downtown streets are, where there's no parking on 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., which we currently have on the Boulevard Chestnut in our downtown areas, with the following exceptions, the same as on Sundays, state holidays, or when those areas are designated as no parking areas by the Director of Public Works, or with written approval of the city manager or his designee. So there's still exceptions if we needed to use them for special events, snow parking. Firefighters need to park their vehicles there because they're out on a strike team. Those would be exceptions that we could be able to work. And then again, it allows us to keep the areas clean, keep people moving in and out of them, and not blocking up our public parking areas with long-term parking.
All right, so this is the first reading of a city ordinance regarding parking. We'll move into clarifying questions, then have a public hearing, come back for further discussion. Questions?
Chief, there were a number of changes with this, and I know you know this very well, so I just thought it best to ask you. If somebody is out for a night on the town, group of 3 people, they take 2 cars. One person's not able to drive home. Their friends take them home. A car has to be left overnight someplace. Is there any place to leave a car overnight?
There wouldn't be any parking down there, but, you know, we're very simple people to work with, really. And you say, hey, we're going to leave the car here. We get this all the time. We're going to leave a car here. Can we leave the car? We're not going to get towed. Not a problem. Or let's say they do get issued a citation and they come in for their hearing with the city manager and they go, look, we got drunk, we took a car home, we left our car there. Most likely we're going to say, we're not going to charge you. Well, but at the same point, so people are drinking downtown, they call us, give us a ride home, hey, we're going to leave our vehicle there. The officer on duty knows he's not going to write the ticket. Or let's say there is a ticket issued and it comes to the city manager and go, hey, they were doing the responsible thing. We're going to waive the fees, and we do this quite often on other areas. The biggest thing is that we're not talking, it's going to be there for 3 weeks.
Well, right, and I totally support
so
the objectives of what you're trying to do. The only thing that occurred to me when reading this was, geez, what about somebody who's also trying to do the right thing by not letting somebody drive when they shouldn't? That's for clarifying. That's all I got. Thank you.
More clarifying questions, council? No? All right, we'll open this up, open up the public hearing on this item. In the audience, would anyone like to come up and comment on parking? Go ahead. Gino,
Hello,
name and location.
Gino Ferrucci, I live in Mount Shasta. So I watch all the meetings on YouTube, and I think about a month and a half ago, you guys already said you don't enforce the signs down there because there's a big fight with the hair cutting for about, I don't know, 3 months. And you guys already said in the YouTube, we don't enforce those signs. So I think now if we're gonna put more signs, now we're gonna do selective enforcement of them. I don't know. I think you need a better idea than that. Or maybe the lot that you're having the issues with is the one behind Parker Plaza, and maybe those get signs and those ones are enforced because you've already said you're not going to enforce the signs. You guys even talked about maybe taking them down. So that's just my 2 cents.
Would you like to comment, Chief?
Yeah, 2 different issues. One is that was discussing the 2-hour time parking, and we can't issue at the time there was 2 conflicting circuit issues regarding on what we could, whether we could mark a tire or whether we couldn't mark a tire. So we're conflating 2 different issues. So the 2-hour parking has, it's still making its way. There's a writ of certia to the Supreme Court, but right now the 9th Circuit says you can mark a tire, and the 5th Circuit says you can't mark a tire. So that's what that discussion was about, was what the court said was a constitutional search by talking versus, because we enforce the signs. We enforce the no parking on McLeod. We enforce the no parking during snow removal. We enforce the no parking 72 hours. We enforce the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We enforce the no parking down here. So we're enforcing the signs. It was just that specific issue of 2-hour parking in front of that spot. There was a conflict of what the court says was a search and required a search warrant. I know it's ridiculous, but one court says we have to have a search warrant to put yellow chalk on a tire. So that's what the 2 issues were.
Ace Hardware is, and that's where it has the no overnight parking. You already said that you weren't going to enforce that anyway, because just like he was saying, if someone's drinking, you had already addressed that you don't do that to people already. Just like you said, now you'd write the ticket off, or if they came in and we were drinking, we'd get rid of it. You've already said that you'd do that, at least for Castle Street. Because I used to own the Vets Club, and my worry was, are my tenants, are my customers going to get a ticket or not? I'm like, they don't want them to drive. And at one point, I actually rented the parking lot you guys are going to rent right now. The Ace bought that one. I actually rented that for the city because it was $1,000 a month, and you guys didn't have the money to pay for that when I owned the bar.
So
I'm very aware about the bar.
I don't know who was the chief back then, but right now, if you're going to call, I mean, we have a lot of discretion. So do we write everybody that we stop for a ticket? No.
No.
We give them warnings. If we know that there's going to be an event and we're expecting to have people that are going to be sitting there, are we going to tow their cars? No. All right. What we're trying to do is say that you can't just dump your stuff here and take away everybody else's parking in all the parking lots.
I'm all about it.
So do we enforce them? When it calls for enforcement, we will enforce them. And when it calls for discretion, the officers use their discretion. So,
all right, thank you.
Anybody else from the audience like to speak? You don't have to introduce yourself.
I was going to say, you guys all know me. So my main concern with it is just the time that you have for snow season, basically, and that there's nothing that we can do about it because there's obviously certain people are living there. There's tons and tons of trash over there, especially in Parker Plaza. You know the people that are living there, I'm sorry to say, but I mean in terms of maybe you can't do motor homes or something to that extent. But I think letting somebody have basically a couple months free rent is kind of crazy, and it also makes it very unsafe down there as well. I personally had an issue just looking at the Christmas trees right over there and someone coming out, from behind one, or even for that doing the Christmas tree lighting back there. That was a main concern, was just having transients that were living down in that parking lot and stealing things, taking things off the trees, making it, just terrible. And we know what the problem is, but the excuse is they can stay there because of the snow. So that's all I gotta say.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Anyone else from the audience? No. All right, hands raised.
And our first speaker will be Johanna.
Okay, Johanna, speak when you're ready.
Hi there, good evening. So this is an interesting topic because I've come across this as well, where we've had people parking on the streets on Pine Street over by the hospital, because there's a few regular RVs that are there. For the most part, they aren't problematic, but we've had a few cars that do, they leave a lot of litter and whatnot. And one issue that's come up with is the tagging that Chief Gibson was talking about. I think we need to be able to enforce the 72 hours, because it seems what people do is they just take their vehicle and move 5 feet, and then the officer says, oh, we can't give a ticket. They moved. And it's like, okay, but they're taking advantage of the situation. And just like Allison was saying, they're getting free rent, et cetera. Or they're just leaving. In one situation last year, someone parked their car there for 2 weeks, probably while they were on vacation or something. And then, so I guess, how is this going to impact other streets? And perhaps would it be a good idea is there like a lot or a park or some place where people can be guided to? Because I used to be told by the police that they would guide them to over by Ray's parking lot or wherever. But I think this is going to be an issue, and I think it's good that we make it safer and we crack down on it and enforce it. I'm all in favor of that, but I think we need a solution to put these people somewhere so that they have a place to go, because it's just going to move the situation from one area to another area, and then it might become more of an issue for, residential homes or other places. So I guess that would be my concern, is that we have one place that's there. Or maybe we say, you know, to Jeff's point about the driving home, maybe we allow, you know, 24-hour parking and then just really enforce the people who are doing it long term, you know, like that are doing it for 2 days or 3 days in a row. Anyway, I mean, those are just some thoughts, because I think it's a very difficult subject to address, because, you know, we want safety, and we don't want garbage, and et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate you guys are coming up with some solutions, and maybe consider having an area where people can be safely directed to. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Johanna. Anyone else with their hands raised? Kathy? All right, so we're going to close the public hearing on this item and bring this back to council. I think this is a step in the right direction regarding parking. What are your thoughts, folks?
Just wanted to say thank you for bringing this. It's been a long time coming, I think, and the differentiation is it's allowing your force to be able to act on these things. It's not like an all or nothing thing, so it's just giving you the power to do what's needed. Being a mom of school kids, it's kind of bleeding out into the school areas, so I'm happy to see this.
Comments, councilors? Yeah, go ahead.
Chief, to Ashley's to commentary. Do you have the manpower? Do you have the scheduling to be able to clean these places up with these new hours of no parking?
Absolutely. And if I can, real quick, for Ashley's comment about the snow parking. So we're working right now. We couldn't do it this year because we got into snow season, but I've been with the Public Works Director and we're coming up. So this next year, there's going to be some new changes for citizens of Mount Shasta that haven't recognized before, where the exception to the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. and the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. up at the Sisson Ball Field will only be on those days during snow removal operations. So when we put out the code red, or as is ready now, ready Siskiyou, from the time that we're clearing the streets, that's when you can move your vehicle off of the street. They're not going to be designated for storage of trailers and that kind of stuff anymore, and for vehicles that are unregistered. So that's coming, but that's a whole different thing than what we're doing right now. We're trying to address right now the situation that we're having.
Thank you, Chief. All right, would one of the councilors like to make a motion to move this to a second reading?
Move that we move to approve and move to a second reading the proposed ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta, amending section 10.44.080 of the Mount Shasta Municipal Code by title only.
Thank you, Councilor.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And aye. Any opposed? All right, we move to a second reading 2 weeks from now. All right, so we're on number 10. This has to do with the EIFD changes and expansion, and so forth. Todd will take the floor on this item.
Sure. Council passed a resolution of intent in September 11th of 2023 with the idea of forming an enhanced infrastructure finance district. What that involves is designating certain APNs, certain parcels, in other words, that are part of this district. And the idea is we go through a number of steps until the state certifies us as an enhanced infrastructure finance district with the parcels that were part of the resolution of intent. It was after the fact, there were some parcels identified at the north end of Mount Shasta that we wanted to add. And so we've submitted those parcels to our consultant, Cosmont, to expand the map and come back with a new resolution of intent, which is why we're here tonight, to reform or to say that we're on our track to form the district with these additional parcels. Now, if you have questions about the EIFD itself, we've got Joe Dieguez from Cosmont on the line. with us, but it's pretty straightforward. It's what we passed in September 11th, just with additional properties added.
Very good, thank you, Todd. Clarifying questions from council. Start over here on my left. You do? Okay, go ahead.
Just one. There was a discussion in the text of this agenda item about what percentage of the tax increment would be allocated to potentially either pay off a bond or go into a pot of money to do further projects relative to versus being shared with the general fund. Is there any guideline? I mean, I'm not even quite framed on a question, which is basically how on earth do you figure out what the equation for that is?
Well, that's not quite correct. The formation of an EIFD says, and I know you guys know this, that once you form the district, from that point forward, given how long you want that district to last, is that 25 years or is that 30? And at that point, the property tax revenue from those districts that are part of the EIFD, any additional increment in tax revenue that accrues over time, instead of that coming to the city, you reinvest that money into projects that are going to generate the most tax increment finance. That's it. But there are a lot of things besides that that you're allowed to do as part of EIFD law in California. There are specific things you can spend this money on. If you've got specific questions about what that money can be spent on, we've got Joe on the line. But
let me try this one more time.
Okay.
So what you're telling me is my question is a valid question, but not till the EIFD is closed and completed.
I think I didn't follow your train of thought on the question.
I think he's
Sometimes
asking
that's tricky.
what the revenue will be of are you asking, Jeff, what the expected tax increment will be? Yeah.
Because it's tricky to follow me.
It's
sure.
Somewhere between 7 and 9% of what of the city tax take from property taxes. All the money goes to the county. The city tax take from that alone is somewhere between 7 and 9% per Cosmont. So depending on the size of the tax increment, the increase in value will determine how much money we can use towards the district.
Correct. Yeah.
That I got.
Okay.
Maybe I misread this.
Okay.
But my understanding after reading this was that whatever that increment was over the baseline property tax number, the tax increment, that there could be some formula applied to what percent of those total monies, the increment that came in, would go towards either paying off a bond that was created for the infrastructure or whatever pot of money that was to go for those infrastructure elements versus some percentage that could go just straight into the general fund if the TIF bond obligations were already met.
So yes to the first part, as long as though the bond that was taken out was for improvements for properties within the EIFD.
Right, that part I got. It's the part that goes to the general fund. Is that possible?
That's the first time I've heard of that. That's not my understanding.
Look,
but we've got the pro on the line.
Right. Well,
can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's absolutely right. You can split the dollars from the new increment. You can choose to allocate all of it just for the projects, as the city manager explained. And some agencies do that. Or you can sort of share it, as was stated, the council member. The analyses that we've run are sort of shaking out at about 50%, meaning splitting the dollar, splitting the tax increment dollar between the EIFD for funding the catalytic infrastructure, with the other 50% flowing unencumbered to the general fund just to support the day-to-day. It is both we'd say art and science. We generally prefer keeping it simple, numbers like 50%, 25%, in some cases 75%. The analysis behind it, the science though, is we're always looking at both sides of the coin. Can we set aside enough dollars to actually fund meaningful projects? And with the remainder, can we still keep the general fund whole? So we do what we call the general fund net fiscal impact analysis. We forecast, yeah, great, create some new development, some new revenues, but yes, we'll also create new expenditures, and we have to look at the bottom line picture. And so in arriving at the 50% number that's shown in some of the presentation material, such as back in September, that's how we arrived at it, and we were assuming about 50%.
May I have one question?
Did I understand you correctly in that the funds that went to the general fund or could potentially go to the general fund are unencumbered?
Correct.
Thank you.
Through the chair. So I did not previously understand that split dollar concept, and my question is, how is that determined? Is it determined on a annual basis or biannual basis, or is it carved in stone?
Thank you. It is original. It is set up. It is carved in with something soft, clay. So when you first form the district, you are memorializing it into this plan. That is the commitment. But every year you are, and so whatever you choose at the beginning, if you do nothing else, that's going to be the number. If we say 50% now and we don't take any action to change it in the future, it's going to stay 50%. But you do have the ability, in fact, you would have the requirement to revisit this financing plan at least once annually and make amendments if you saw fit. The caveat is if you've made an obligation, if you've issued debt or you've entered into a reimbursement agreement with a developer that says, you know, you're always going to have 50% encumbered, you're bound by that. But if you don't enter into any such binding commitments, you have some more flexibility on changing that number year to year, if that makes sense.
So, Joe, just one question. This is Todd. So I think I was mistaken about part of this. The money that you were able to hold back for the general fund, I thought the intent of that was to cover the last tax increment that you would accrue over time, so we don't end up in a hole.
Agreed. Yeah, that is, I think that is a key component of it. It really is. It's supporting the day-to-day, making sure you're not losing money by tying up some piece of the future funds.
Thank you.
To the chair. Yeah, go ahead. Following the adoption and amendment of these resolutions, would you anticipate that we would get our subcommittee together with the 2 members of the public still and then get that moving?
Agreed. I think city manager would say the same. Yes, I believe there's a city manager's updated timeline in the staff report. That is the next immediate action item to put together this hybrid entity, the so-called public financing authority. That would include 3 members of the city council and 2 members of the public, and then get the thing going. So there would be an actual, we call it's a business plan, but it's called the infrastructure financing plan that puts all these terms sort of formally on paper, and that plan would definitely have to come back, not only to that hybrid entity, that public financing authority, but it would have to come back to this full city council for approval before the district could be fully formed.
Thank you.
All right, so we're moving on to public comment at this time. Folks in the audience, EIFD, anybody interested in speaking on this or asking questions?
Yeah, I guess I just have one thing, and I've mentioned this before on the EIFD. I think that what I've seen other communities do when they're establishing something like an EIFD is also make sure that there's a debt management policy in place. So especially when we're talking about sort of debt financing potentially for infrastructure. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. All right, anyone else in the audience? No. All right, any hands raised? No. All right, back to us here at the council. Any further comments, councilors?
I'm excited to have it back.
Okay, it's an enlarged EIFD, which means that when everything gets built out in the next 3 years, there'll be lots of TIF to manage. Hey, you gotta have hope, right? All right, so with, this is a...
5 to 15 years?
This is, yeah, 15 might be more realistic, yeah. This is a resolution.
Yes.
So someone, this is going to be 09, so someone please make a motion. It's on page 30, if you need help with the
I'm getting there.
wording.
Getting there. I will move to approve resolution CCR-24-09, resolution of the City Council, City of Mount Shasta, amending resolution CCR-23-26 to revise the map of the proposed Mount Shasta Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And aye. Any opposed? All right, we move on to number 11. And this has to do with a contract for building inspector, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay. And this will be led by Todd?
Maybe just to kick it off, and we'll kick it over to Jeff. We parted ways with our recent building inspector after 60 days notice. We then put out an RFP for professional services where anybody, including the previous building inspector contractor, could submit, and we got, turns out, 2 responses. It's actually, one was the winner's parent company. Basically, it's just paying the overhead to have someone come and provide the services that the winner would provide. With this new person coming on, every year we've been budgeting $80,000 for building inspection fees that covers $30,000 of the previous individual's salary and any overruns that they charge for based on their contractual obligations, or our contractual obligations to them, the city, and 20% of that went to Wairika to pay for plan check. The incumbent who applied and has won would charge $80,000. They would take that flat fee, and they would, instead of the 20% that goes to Wairika for plan check would happen in-house, further streamlining the process. As part of this agreement, this person will be here full-time, at least 2 days a week. My understanding is third if needed, scheduling inspections and offering consultations and doing plan review. And I think at this point, Jeff, if you've got some stuff to add, if I've missed some stuff, feel free to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So to clarify, the contract that we've written is a vastly improved contract that gives us, the city, far more control over the previous very outdated and one-sided contract that did not give the city control over a few key things. The first is where that individual does the work. That is, we're not going to pay this individual unless they're on site, that is in the city, and to the letter of this contract in City Hall at least 16 hours per week. Initially, we're setting up 2 full days with 1 additional day available digitally. And by available, I mean during that 2 days of on-site availability and 1 day off-site, totaling 24 hours a week, they will be available via cell phone direct contact to this individual by anyone. That is customer, that is staff, so both internal and external customer service provisions via direct cell phone contact, not a voicemail, not a message phone, to be returned within 24 hours. Also, direct email contact while they're here, so that hopefully during that 3-day span or 24-hour span, the new building official is able to conduct billable work. So that is fee capture. The estimate is that roughly 60% of the building official services will be captured by building permit fees. Additionally, we are co-locating those services within one individual or group of individuals. So this contractor will provide all the services that a traditional building official provides: plan review, building inspection, et cetera. I want to clarify one thing in the staff report that alludes to 2 days of boots on the ground and 1 day remote. The clarification is that, as I said, is 24 hours of time. That 24 hours of time equates to, at a 60% fee capture rate, roughly $80,000 a year. So we backed into 24 hours a week based on that billing rate. That's a fixed fee, or excuse me, a fixed general fund contribution that has been consistent in our budget for quite some time, I understand. So we kept that consistent, not an increase, not a decrease, but a consistent status quo general fund contribution to this effort. Beyond that contribution, this contracting firm will provide 100% of the demand with fee capture accordingly. So if it's plan check, it's 100% fee capture. If it's building official services, sometimes that is over-the-counter consultation by a mom and pop that needs some help on how to prepare a plan set. That's a fee capture that we can't guarantee. So that's where we arrive at that 60%. In the event that demand for those 4 fee services, plan, check, and on-site building inspection, to the previous commenter's point, exceeds that baseline, this firm will meet that demand 100% of the time. So on-site, boots on the ground, field inspections as needed. Those inspections will be scheduled through the front counter. The front counter will do so digitally with a dedicated calendar so that we have accountability and oversight in my chair to the individual's effectiveness at making sure that inspections are taking place in a timely fashion. That initial 3 days or 24 hours of time is based on current workload volume. So currently we have 11 active permits and 6 of them are in plan check. So I've backed into that number of 2 days on site, 1 day on call as an initial schedule only. And we are capable by this contract of increasing or decreasing that and paying only for the services that that individual provides. And that's all I've got.
Okay, time for clarifying questions. Councilmember Stearns.
Well, first of all, this sounds like a greatly improved arrangement to what we had previously. I do have a question. Will DevCom provide more than one person, or are we relying strictly on one person to do it all?
They have identified in Exhibit B1 their labor rates attachment to the resolution and the professional services agreement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions by title. I do know that they, as a contracting organization, have relationships with all of the people or functions specified in this table. So multiple individuals.
If I may have a second question. In the past, we've been using Joe Peterson to do the plan checks, mailing them off to her, having her check, mailing them back. This sounds like if the plans can be checked in-house, save a tremendous amount of time.
Yeah, that's particularly acute with respect to challenge for plan check when you have trade permits or over-the-counter permits. These permits are typically reviewed on the spot, in-house, and issued over-the-counter. That service will be new and an enhanced form of permit issuance with this group. So we will be able to do that with one organization, primarily digitally for more complicated permits, but those over-the-counter ones, the easy-peasy ones, the roofs, the trade stuff, electrical panels, switches, that kind of stuff, can be issued over-the-counter during these 2 days. And the third day, as we said on call, is surplus, if you will. Digital review is popular generally with jurisdictions of our size. I think that there might be a little bit of effort in training our customer base that they have an additional opportunity to submit digitally. We've already begun that rollout, if you will, to our frequent flyers. We will do so as a marketing campaign, if you will, for this enhanced service, should you approve this contract tonight.
One more question, if I may. Thank you. You talked about having a electronic calendar that would be kept. Is that for building inspections? And in the past, with prior building inspector, there was no, he wouldn't show up any set time. He'd give maybe a 4-hour window. So is this going to change that so that contractors know when the building inspector is going to be there?
Yeah, the new website will have, and we currently have a portal for it, if you will, a submittal portal for all forms of building department services. They include plan submittal information, plan check timelines, and inspection windows. And so all that will be tracked online, calendared online. Typically, with a workload of what we're looking at here in terms of active permits and plan checks, we think we can handle those in 3 scheduled inspections per day. So typically those are clustered in either the morning or the afternoon, depending on the complexity of the inspection. Our front office will schedule those either through the website, phone call, or over the counter. And the rest of us will be able to see, that is staff internally, city manager and myself, we'll be able to see when those are inspected. And as I said, we'll have some oversight on the result of those inspections.
So we're done using Joe Pedersen?
Correct.
Yes. I speak for a lot of people that way. Good riddance.
Okay. Councilmember Clore.
I am of the understanding that we have been budgeting $80,000 annually for this, but it is a $50,000 increase from what we were paying previously. Do I have that right?
No. The contract is written that we're going to be replacing. The contract was written many years ago, specifies that compensation for building inspection services shall be 90% of the building permit fees collected by the city until a total of $35,000 has been paid to the contract. $35,000 shall be the minimum baseline for annual cost of services. In essence, what that says is that the city has lost $35,000 regardless of the service delivered by that contractor. What we're saying is we're eliminating that baseline, and we're saying that 60% of every hour or dollar spent in reviewing or that service being provided is recoverable by a fee that we're going to be doing a job of tracking. So building permit fees should cover, by our experience, and both mine and this contractor's, up to 60% of that. The $35,000 will disappear as a baseline guarantee. By comparison, having gone back and looked at the invoices over the last year for our previous building inspector, we were in the neighborhood of just under $80,000 in total contribution to this individual. So that includes Joe Peterson's plan check services, the on-site inspection services, and the very minimal amount of time spent by our previous building official with in-house internal customer service and counter customer service.
Are we done with questions? All right, so take this to public comment. I know we have one person. Thank you for waiting.
Back to when I was speaking in the beginning, I was just, if I'm hearing correctly, are inspections 2 days a week? Is that what the current plan is?
No, our individual initially will be on site providing counter service to folks that come in over the counter and ask questions about various permit or building services related questions, helping staff start up our new digital review for building permit submittals, and then an additional 1 day for a total of 24 hours of overhead contribution from the general fund. Anything beyond that, so if we get a new triplex submitted tomorrow, and there is a new plan check or permit issued for which we're scheduling inspections, the service provided by this individual will be aligned to meet that demand. So we will provide that service, those inspections, whenever those inspections are ready. We will, which is very standard practice, cluster those inspections so that they are in a manner that is consistent and convenient with both contractor readiness and our staff's availability. But that's the service capacity of this individual and this collection or this firm is sufficient to meet the demand that I've projected based on historic practices.
I guess I'm maybe still a little unclear, like if I have my permit and I start building and I need an inspection, is it the next day no matter when I ask for it, or is it on set days of the week that I can get an inspection?
We would offer it depending on the workload. So for example, we would say if you've got an inspection that is ready, you'll have a slot within a 2 or 3 day period, and you're offered that slot, and we schedule it. And we arrive on site to inspect when you've scheduled that inspection.
Okay. I guess my biggest concern is I have a crew of 5 people who we do the work, we're prepared for an inspection, and if we have to wait 2, 3, 4 days before we can get an inspection, I don't know what to do with my crew. I mean, we're at a standstill until we get an inspection before we can move forward, and that's very counterproductive.
In that event, this organization will provide the services necessary to inspect when you're ready, when your crew's ready, and you've demonstrated that so that we can provide a scheduled inspection within a time-certain frame. We're not going to just show up unannounced or come by if you're not ready. So it's a two-way street.
Oh, well, I would assume that when I call for an inspection, it's because I'm ready. But I was just wondering, if you guys are coming on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I'm ready for an inspection on Wednesday,
then they'll provide staff if you're ready, and there's an availability to inspect on that day.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's my biggest concern. Because like I said, I have 5 guys that could be standing around waiting to get an inspection passed before we can move forward, and that's not helpful.
You got it. That's fundamentally why we're making the change.
Okay,
To
well-
enhance customer service for folks in the field. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yep.
That's what I was hoping for.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope your concerns were addressed. Anybody else in the audience? No. Okay. All right, we're going to close public comment on this resolution item and bring it back to council for further comment. Okay.
Planning Director, just a little thank you. I went through the agenda details. I wasn't quite sure how some of this compared to the previous structure. Councilmember Stern's questions helped, and thank you to the builder who further clarified some of my questions, which are kind of nuts and bolts in this world. Building's not my area. Just thank you. Seems like this will work.
Thank you, Jeff. Comments to my right here? No, I made yourself clear, John. Okay, Tessa, go ahead.
I think it's no secret that I've had some turmoil with this topic. Namely, I think because of the way that the previous contract was terminated before that contract was ready or before it was lapsing. At the last council meeting that we all spoke, it was made clear to me that council does not vote on these contracts, that it is of the discretion of Todd and Jeff. So I was not anticipating this contract to come before us. So my biggest thing is we need to be consistent with how we do things and have some integrity for the people that are on the other end of this. I am in the world of construction, and a change of this creates a lot of turmoil behind the scenes that I have a window into. And I would appreciate moving forward that we have a clear idea of what does come before council, what is our responsibility to oversee, what is not as part of an employee-employer contractee. That would be helpful for me, and I think helpful for everyone involved.
All right, so along those lines, let's clarify that.
Yep.
My understanding is that contracts out to bid, such as this, do come back to council for
Yes.
approval.
In terms of terminating a service contract, that's the city manager's discretion based on non-performance.
Okay, and with respect to employees, if you were going to turn this into an employee position, meaning that they were on our payroll,
That's different.
that would be your call with
It would.
city planner, right? Okay. You wouldn't have to come to council for that.
Correct. But if we're signing a new contract with a new firm, it's got to come to council. This one happens to be a wash.
With respect to finances, it's...
What's that?
With respect to finances, it's
Yeah, but
thought to be a non-issue with respect to budget.
But it still needs to come to council.
Right.
Yeah, that just wasn't clear last time, but I am understanding now.
I think there was some thought that this was going to be an employee.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so we're here, and we have a resolution. It's going to be number 10. Would someone like to...
I'll move that City Council approve Resolution CCR 2410, resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta authorizing the city manager to enter into a professional services agreement with Leo Da Paula, DBA Development Compliance Solutions, parens, DevCom, close parens, for building official inspection, plan check services, and special projects.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. We move on to item number 12, and that would be outside meetings. I think since our last meeting, there have been none. I missed the Collier Interpretive and Information Center meeting, and I think we've discussed all of our Finance Committee meetings, so there really are no meetings to talk about. We have a Lola meeting this Wednesday, so there'll be something to talk about next time. So we'll move on to future agenda items. Todd has informally requested that we give him a little bit of a break on new agenda items until he clears the deck here for a little while. So unless anyone has a really critical future agenda item they want to add, we'll just end the meeting. Yeah, well, you get the message, yeah.
Think of something for May, is what you're saying? Let's get through April.
Tim, are you itching to add an agenda item, or can you wait?
I am satisfied with the number of items that are on the future agenda.
Yeah, and there are lots of items currently underway, continuing, pending, that
Yes.
need to be resolved, of which we talked about today, so. All right, it is currently 7:25. I am going to end this meeting. Anybody opposed to that? No. We close at 7:25. Thank you, folks.